Hello, Channel Automation podcast listeners. Welcome back to another deep dive into the techniques that convert leads. I'm your host, KC Urias, and I am joined today by our local 5-9 and call center expert, Stephen White, and our special guest from Outbound ANI, Jason Shatzkamer. Jason is a computer programmer and a co-founder of Outbound ANI, an SaaS, or maybe it's SaaS platform that helps outbound callers reach more people in ways that we know is going to have to be very strategic in this kind of a difficult environment. So welcome in, Jason. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So before we get started, just tell us a little bit about Outbound ANI and your work there.
Again, to tell you where Outbound ANI came from, just quickly about me, I'm a computer programmer. That's what I do. That's kind of been my career since I started a career. And at some point, I got involved in call center through some weird twist and turn. So what you're looking at here is a combination of computer programming and outbound calling. It's like, if you mush those two things together, that's what you got going on here. Looking at things from that view, I've been doing a lot of consulting with outbound call centers and watching them all struggle with declining contact rates for various reasons. And no two centers were the same. So everybody that was having the same common problem, which is we're struggling with contact rates, why they were struggling with contact rates was extremely different across every one of these customers that I was working with. And it was a scramble on every case to try to figure out why and to try to help them, in a difficult scramble. At the same time, a lot of other companies were emerging in this space to try to help them with these declining contact rates. They were positioned as number reputation management solutions, things like that, which was brand new terminology for the space. This never existed before. And all of these companies that were doing it started to appear, charging outrageous prices to the customers under the premise that if you pay these prices to us, we can undo the damage that's being caused to your numbers. And further, that 100% of the damage that is being caused to your numbers and your contact rate has to do with stir shaken protocols and spam likely, which was a direct contradiction to everything that I had been seeing with my customers, which is that yes, it happens in some cases, but no, it's not the answer in all the cases. And so, but yet the promise was that this solution was going to help every single one of these customers equally if they all just paid the vig. So I'm watching all of this unfold and I'm jumping up and down on the desk and I'm screaming up and down. I'm saying, no, for you, maybe it'll work. For the rest of you, it's not going to work. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. And sure enough, it didn't work because the problem that they were having wasn't that problem. So you can solve that problem, but if they're not having it, it doesn't make a difference.
Are you trying to tell me that not every single situation and every person that exists in the world is exactly the same? That's crazy.
I know. Don't shoot the messenger. So this is kind of where it came from, is I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, you have this problem and you're doing this wrong and you're doing these 20 things wrong and you're doing this wrong and you're doing this wrong. And I can fix these things. And so I said, let me take a swing at this. And they said, please do. And we did. And so again, putting together computer programming and call center, we sat down with all of these observations and all of this wealth of data that had come our way from our consulting customers. And we built a software product to automate the kinds of things that if I was sitting there behind this person's dialer, I would be doing this for them. So piece by piece, we just started automating and started doing things to the dialers, not in terms of, like with no relationships with telephone carriers, with no special privileges, no outrageous fees, just and in the beginning, not even using AI, just using regular right? just regular plain old school regular intelligence. We built tool sets, and when we plug these tool sets into the dialing platforms of our customers, it fundamentally changes the way their system works. And it changes it in ways that it should have been operating this whole time, but nobody knew how to make it happen, or it just didn't happen. So the minute you turn the switch on our software, all of these myriad of things start to heal themselves. And no matter what your challenge was on the contact rate side, there's a piece of outbound A&I that is touching it, and that is manipulating it, and that is trying to correct it, and that is trying to equalize it and normalize it. And so that's the kind of thing that's happening. So it's cool because the evolution of our product, when we get to the end and we reach a really stubborn customer and we can't figure out what's going on with this customer, why it's happening, we know exactly which of these areas is being impacted with our dashboards, and we're able to jump in and we're able to say, okay, what are we missing in this area? And then we go and we figure it out, and we add this new superpower, as you will, to the software package, and we release the code. And the next thing you know, we see everybody's contact rates go up because it turns out all of them were having this problem also. So bit by bit by bit by bit, what we learn with each individual customer and release into the code base further improves the way all of our customers work at once. It's the funnest thing I've ever been a part of.
That sounds amazing. And it sounds like it's a client by client basis. And so do you find yourself like having to alter the code every time you have a new situation with a new client? Or is it one of those plug and play things?
I don't look at it as having to adjust the code. I look at it as getting to adjust the code. It's a privilege because here's the deal. With each of these adjustments and each of these things, we get that much closer to full and genuine automation, right? With each, I didn't see that coming, thing that comes our way. With each thing we learn how to adapt to and how to handle and how to deal with each of these anomalies, it builds software maturity. And so the next time you meet a customer and they have that problem, it's like, oh, we've seen that one before. And more, we've seen that one before. And so now for me, the most exciting thing in the world is to be hit with a new anomaly that we can't solve, because right there is the opportunity to make things even better, right? Like I said, I didn't say I'm a call center guy who is also a programmer. What I said was that I'm a programmer who's a call center guy. My base is a programmer. My natural instinct is to do puzzles. If I wasn't sitting and trying to figure this out for my customers, the minute, and it'll happen here, the moment we hang up, I'm gonna open my phone and I'll be on a crossword puzzle or something stupid like that, right? Right.
I allowed you to my daily Wordle.
Oh yeah. I started getting on a habit of doing that with my grandma, actually. It's a good way to connect. I wanted to kind of give us a little, I guess, talk a little bit on myself, who's maybe more of a call center guy who's also a bit of a programmer. And I enjoy this kind of like dichotomy of our two personalities, where like you kind of always approach things from like a programming side of things, and I tend to look at things technically from like maybe like a user side, like where can we improve how users are interacting with the program, or how are things are being affected by the decisions that people are making over time, because I tend to see this stuff kind of approach. Like I had an issue with one of the companies we work with before. I guess it's already out there. Lead Perfection. Just say it. I deal with them a lot. There was an issue the other day where we were working with where their program was falling a little bit short. Like we had set up a page where there are certain buckets leads are supposed to sort out. And for some reason, they weren't sorting into one of the buckets. And it was this back and forth with them where it just wasn't showing up in that specific bucket. And again, I would go back to them and say, look, we did everything you said and it's still not showing up. Well, I'll talk to this guy. And then they'd go back and they come back to me and they say, actually, did you try doing this? And it's like problem adjacent. And it's like, I know, I did everything you said. It's still not doing what it's supposed to do. It's definitely something on your guys' end. You need to try to adjust this. And it's just so frustrating dealing with them. Sorry, it just really came to light that I've been dealing with these guys for a bit this week. I needed to vent. I came here to vent. I'm here to vent. I'm sorry. Anyways, let's talk about solution stuff.
That's what we're here for. Vent as long as you love.
But Stephen, you bring up a really good point, because it's like, what way are we approaching problems? Because Jason, just like you said, I said, like, do you have to adjust the code, or where is the side coming from? And you're like, no, puzzles are fun. That's the whole thing that I like about programming, is trying to fix the problem, right? And so at what point is there any kind of point where you reach like sort of a wall where it becomes more frustrating than fun. And then if you get there, what do you do to keep moving forward? Like, like I've exhausted everything I could possibly think of. What kind of way do you get yourself back on track?
I have very short attention span. So for me, there's no such thing as like a 6-month project, right? There's no such thing as we'll figure this out over time. The moment the problem's put in front of my face, I won't leave it until it's solved. Now, the reality is when you examine a problem, there's only so many moving parts that can happen. So as long as you're constantly having that, right? So is the problem on this half or this half? Well, when we get to the middle, it's fine. So therefore, the problem must be happening on this half. So now I'm going to half it again. I'm going to be like, well, when we get to the middle here, it's still fine. Okay, so the problem's in that last little quarter there, right? And then it's like, all right, what happens when I get to the middle here? Oh, look, it's not fine. So it's something between that last quarter and right there, therefore, there's the problem. It just emerges like the clouds parting, right? Everything just kind of comes into, it's like, oh, there you are. And when you get really good at this, you bring it to every issue, whether it's a programming issue, a call center issue, a dialing issue, a lead perfection issue, a camera and microphone issue, a background noise issue, right? You just process of elimination, you get to the point and you get better and better at it. It's a learned skill, troubleshooting, right? And debugging, it's a learned skill and you learn it over time, you get better at it. No different than any other activity that you're going to do. It improves with practice. And so I've spent my whole career doing this. It's been decades now. Usually I can get to that relevant portion in minutes. And that's it's funny. I look around at people doing any job, whether it's an accountant, whether it's a call center manager, whether it's a chief operating officer, whether it's an appointment scheduler. And I say, how in the world do you do your job without understanding systems theory? I don't comprehend how to even understand today's environment.
I'm probably the only one on this call that's not a puzzle solver, and let me tell you how. We see that there's a problem, we say, "Uh-oh, I can't solve that," and give up. That's what we do.
You call Steven. That's what you do. Or you call me. And we've become, Steven, I can't speak for Steven, but I'm pretty certain, having heard everything that I just heard already, I'm pretty certain that, like me, we are that phone call. We are the ones that get that phone call.
I get them.
Whenever somebody doesn't know what to do. And we get them, why? Because people have confidence that we will have the answer. Every one of those phone calls is a pat on the back. It is praise. It is a vote of confidence. It's a good thing, right? And that's kind of the ultimate perspective on it.
I like that. I like that perspective on it. I've been trying to do a better job myself of identifying them as crisis tasks and then delegating my time to those crisis tasks as such. But it feels good to take care of it in the moment. If you know it's like a 5-minute issue, it's like, oh, they just need to go in and adjust this.
Everything's a 5-minute issue.
When you get 100 5-minute issues, your day is shot. Right?
That is a fact. We have at Outbound A&I, we have big customers and we have little customers. And then we have customers that are so little that if we were really thorough and conscientious, we probably shouldn't even have them. But to me, there is no one customer that is more important than another. What I care about, what I thrive on, is the problem. So a good customer with a not so interesting problem gets way less of my attention than a small customer with an interesting problem. I can't take my eyes off it. And so I remember sitting down at a dinner with our team, and we had just brought in a sales executive. She's the greatest thing in the world. And she's known me a long time. And she said to me, she sat me down and she's like, all right, Jason. She's like, what do we have to do? What do I have to do to get you to not spend 3 hours in a day on a $15 a month customer when we have a $15,000 a month customer begging for your attention? She's like, what do I have to do? And I said, to stop me from spending 3 hours on their problem. She's like, yes. I'm like, unfortunately, I'm like, don't let me see it.
You're like, you can't stop me unless I don't know.
Just don't even let me see it. Because if you let me see it, I'm going to latch onto it and I'm not going to let it go. That is a blessing and a curse, right? It works really well for me in what I do. When I'm here from whatever time in the morning I get here until whatever time in the evening I leave, from that moment until that moment, everything that I do, I'm like a fish in the ocean. I'm graceful, I'm flowing, I'm perfect. I am in my natural environment. But then all of a sudden that ends and we have a weekend or a vacation and I go home and I'm standing there at a party where somebody wants to turn to me and say, hey, did you see the Dolphins game last? And like, I am lost. Like, I am such a fish out of water the moment you take me out of that environment. So all these things that work so well in what I do are absolute disasters in real life.
Sounds like you need to start a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. See,
look, that's my that's my people, right? I get that. Put me to a Comic-Con. We'll get along fine. Send me to a Dolphins game.
Have you played Twilight Imperium? Let me tell you about Twilight Imperium. The 12-hour board game where you can sit there for 12 hours and play a board game with your pals. Maybe I'm not a sports guy, but gosh darn, do I love me a good Twilight Imperium game.
I'm not a sports guy. I'm like, the things that interest me are not really the kinds of things that I think interest most people. So it falls, it's like, can I just go back to work where people appreciate these talents as you can't have these kinds of conversations with most people at a drunken bar or something.
I don't know what
work.
to do with bar and sports stuff.
Not my.
Well, we'll find our networking somewhere. I don't know where it'll be. Maybe it'll be in a basement with like-minded people, and we're all doing, I don't know, Magic the Gathering games or something like that, problem-solving stuff. And
if we're going to get together and do our socialization, as long as we're in a place where we can hear each other, that has air conditioning and a whiteboard, we're gonna entertain ourselves. I promise.
That's the dream. Air conditioning.
Well, yeah, we had one of our first company. We had a big company get together, and the first thing we did was set up like we had like a whiteboard. We were brainstorming a bunch of cool stuff. It was like, that was the focus. Eventually we did make our way to karaoke because, karaoke with the pals, it was fine. But it started off there, we were doing the whiteboard stuff, talking about big picture items. That's where we got to where we are today, by planning out where we were going with our company. But I think it takes like people like us, right? The problem solvers, as well as the big dreamers that go out there and do the bars and the things like that. You need all kinds to make a cohesive organization.
But this is what makes things so much fun, right? Being a programmer. This is where it gets really cool. Is that you can also be the one that has the dream, right? And so when you have it and you have that dream and you have that vision, what's cool about being a programmer is that you don't then need someone else. Everyone else is going to have a dream or a vision. Will then have to find someone to make that dream or vision a reality. I can walk into the other room, sit down, and start to paint. I can sit down in the other room and start to draw, and start to code, and start to make database tables, and start to build the scaffolding of my dream with my own fingers. Outbound A&I was written with my own fingers. It wasn't like I had this great idea for Outbound A&I, now let me assemble a team to build it. No. I got lost. I went and I disappeared in a room with my co-developer who also disappeared in a room, and we sat down for months writing hundreds of thousands of lines of code.
Wow. Yeah.
We didn't need anyone else. We didn't need, like, everybody's like, well, what kind of investment did you get to build?
Just time and energy.
I think it was $8 a month for a server that we could kind of load the stuff on to proof of concept test.
That's cheaper than a Minecraft server.
I know. Now, obviously, things have changed. Now we've got a cruise ship, right? Now we're doing 20 million dials a day flowing through our platform, every one of them being analyzed, every area code to area code match, every individual, every exchange, every time of day, every geographic region, understanding, reverse engineering what is going on in today's telecom networks, right? Understanding what's happening. Understanding where carriers are having downtime, where local exchanges are having downtime, not because anyone tells us that they're having downtime. There's no like place to go for the answers. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to the telephone answer system and it's going to give me, it's going to answer all the questions that I have. No, there's no way to know. So what do? You observe. You observe and you listen and you watch and you probe and you test and you say, what if I do that? If things are not working the way they're not, if things are broken, when I do that, this is going to happen. And so you do that and then this happens, like, ah, I found you.
So going off of that same vein, now I know a lot of our listeners do have a question for you, and so I want to make sure that I'm able to ask the expert here. So you mentioned being able to kind of navigate carriers, navigate any kind of compliance, new laws coming in, and there's not like a really good source where you can continuously keep on top of this. You just have to learn and observe. What is the best solution right now for people who are running into problems, businesses who are running into problems, where it's like they got your awesome service that continuously dials out, but then they're starting to run into issues where they're just not being able to connect with people because carriers are blocking it?
There are a gazillion things, that's a technical term. There's a gazillion things that get in the way of your phone call and somebody answering it. And every day, there are more things being added that get in between you and the person that you're trying to call. Spam, likely, which is the one that everybody talks about all the time, is one of those things. It's not 10 of those things. It's not 20. It's one of those gazillion things. No more or less important than any of the other gazillion things that might get in the way. Let's just start by saying that the only time a spam solution will make a difference to your contact rates is when that part of it, that thing, is the reason for your low contact rates. It's basically saying, I'm fine with every other hurdle on the track. That one I can get over. So if that's the case, then you get a solution for that, right? Fine. Very rarely do we see that that's the cause of it, but it does exist. So let's talk about that one, right? Because that's the one that everybody wants to know about. Spam is this one hurdle. It's one of them. So we're going to talk about this one a little bit deeper. Within spam, there's two kinds of spam that we've been able to ascertain. Spam tags that are happening on purpose, meaning somebody's identified you as a problem. They've identified your calls as a problem, your phone numbers as a problem, your call practices as a problem, your call content as a problem. Something, they've identified you as a problem, and so they're warning everyone else, be careful about you. They're outright had enough of it, and they're blocking you. I'm a big proponent of that. My whole career, like I said, I'm a problem solver. I'm a computer guy. The whole sloppy side of the industry, never been my thing. Never been something that I'm interested in. So I like spam likely to the extent that the bad guys get caught. That makes me very happy. To me, the bad guys have always been one of the biggest obstacles for the good guys who are trying to do outreach from their contact centers, is that the public doesn't know the difference between the good and the bad. And so they're naturally skeptical of all. So I'm a big proponent of the bad folks going away, and I hope that spam likely is actually doing that. So let's rule that part of the spam, right? So now we've got a much smaller hurdle. We're left with the people who are not bad guys, but they're getting targeted. Why would a not bad guy get targeted? Well, because they're dialing like a bad guy. They've configured their dialer badly. They're doing bad data buys. They're doing bad data management. Their agents are terrible. Their dialer configuration is terrible. They're letting it ring for 3 dials and then stopping and not right. Now, of those folks, you've got the folks that are doing that on purpose, which again, let's shift them out. Not my interest. The folks who won't fix the problems that they've got to fix this, the ones that thrive on that part of the next. So now we're left with the people that are doing it not on purpose, by accident. They didn't know their dialer was configured that way. They didn't realize that this phone number wasn't, that there was a typo. 9 out of 10, thankfully, of the folks that we meet are dialing badly, not because they want to. They're dialing badly because they don't know how not to, and they don't even know that they're doing it. We fix that like a light switch when we plug into their system. That is ground floor, number one. Those things stop. No more are we doing that. We're not going to be our own worst enemy anymore, right? And I know it's a crass metaphor, but I've said it too. I've used it with customers. I'm allowed to go in and withdraw money from a bank. Similarly, I'm allowed to make a lot of outbound phone calls. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're doing it correctly and with proper consents and all of that kind of good stuff, right?
Yeah, you're not going to go into a bank and then they're going to say, okay, what's the name on your account? And you're like, well, I'm not going to tell you my name. because then you're going to look like the bad guy, like you're going to rob the bank. But it's like you're not doing it on purpose. It's just that's just how it is.
Or how about this? I walk into the bank and there's nothing wrong with me withdrawing money. I can walk in, I can walk up to the teller, I can give them my information, I can ask for $500 and they can give it to me. I sign and I'm out and everybody's happy. But if I walk in the front door, pull on a ski mask and sprint to the teller, I'm probably going to be tackled well before I get to the front of the line. Not because I'm going to do anything bad, but because, boy, do I look like somebody who's about to do something bad. Don't put on the ski mask. Don't sprint to the teller. Take it easy. You walk in, put a smile on your face, right? And all of a sudden, we have no more problems. So that's kind of my analogy and my metaphor, right? It's like step one, don't look like the bad. Don't do that. Stop doing that, is number one, right? And what that is a million things. But number one is stop doing all of those things and we implement that right away. So there's step number one, right? But so now that whole plague of spam likely, the self-created, self-inflicted, most of the time, plague of spam likely, what's setting off all the alarms, the behaviors that you're doing, we stop those. And now all of those alarms stop going off and we're greeted with a whole different reality. However, it doesn't stop spam likely. And here's where we have the part of spam likely that nobody wants to talk, which is, okay, we're no longer doing all these bad things. I've reached out and I've asked Verizon about my phone number and they said it's perfect. I've asked T-Mobile and Sprint about my phone number and they've said it's perfect. I've asked Haya, I've asked TNS, I've asked First Orion, I've asked Call Transparency, RoboKiller, no more Robo. I've asked everybody who will listen, tell me about my phone number, and they all come back to me and they say, clean as a whistle. We like that number. All of them, unanimously, we like that number. Then you make a phone call from it and it shows up spam likely. This is where the whole system breaks down. If they didn't know that it was going to show up as spam likely, then how did it show up as spam likely?
I don't know.
Because I've been a computer programmer long enough to know a tech problem when I see one. And that's what we're dealing with. Right. Nobody knows why it's happening. Nobody can stop it.
The spam likely plague.
That's the fact. You can do everything, you best practices to minimize it happening. If you're a bad guy and you have to conduct yourself in a certain way, you're hopeless. There's nobody that can help you out there. If you keep doing things badly, thankfully, you're going to keep getting punished. If you're willing to change in order to improve your business and to make the business work, then there's hope for you, right? And so we plug in and they're willing to change. And so we change all these things and things start to get better. Now, at the end of it, you're left with problematic outcomes. Even though everything's clean and I'm doing everything to the best of my ability and everybody likes these phone numbers and I've got a good track record of using them, every so often, guess what's going to happen? They're going to show up as spam likely. And it's not going to be with everybody. It's going to be with an occasional person. And that's why when folks say to me, well, I tested it. I called my phone number and it showed up spam likely. And I'm on Verizon. So therefore, all of Verizon is showing spam. No, your phone showed spam likely. As a matter of fact, walk half a mile down the street, call your phone number again, different outcome. Why? Because the route that the call took when you were on that tower was different than the route took when you were on that tower. So the outcome changed because something somewhere turned a 0 to a 1 and now you're spam likely. When you make a phone call to your customer, we talk about CNAM, caller ID, call branding, all this kind of stuff, right? When you make a phone call to a prospect, there's only one person on the planet who knows what showed up on that phone screen, and that's the consumer that you called. Anyone else who says they know what showed up on that phone screen is lying. There's no way to know. Maybe it showed up clean. Maybe it showed up with your brand. Maybe it showed up with your logo. Maybe it showed up as your phone number. But maybe it showed up as a call originating from Afghanistan. Maybe it showed up as John's Plumbing.
Well, has your number registered under a different business, but only sometimes?
Nobody knows. So there are services out there that are like, we'll show you renderings of what it looked like on the consumer's. How do you know? Who told you? What do you have, camera on their phone? Nonsense. It's a screen. It's a rendering. It's a drawing. It's like you drew down the name and like, look.
It fools people though, and
so,
I've seen people present me those analytics
look, really, it says
thinking that I'm
Jason.
silly, saying like, oh look, this is how we do it. And I'm like, I know for a fact that you're not doing it.
And maybe, just maybe, their phone didn't even ring. See, this is the fundamental problem, is that the industry nowadays is trained by all of these different trade shows and the thousands of booths that are there at all these. Everybody's trained that if my contact rate is bad, therefore, spam likely. Therefore, spend money. No, it's not that simple. Sometimes spam likely. And if it is, then why spam likely? But most of the time, it isn't spam likely. Most of the time, it's a myriad of other things. And all these things combined make it very, very difficult these days. You've got third-party apps that are installed on phones that are completely unregulated. You've got the hardware manufacturers at Apple and Samsung and Google, all these guys that are involved in it. And then you've got the different services. You've got the carriers. Everybody's got their hands in this mix. And so the outcome is completely unpredictable. Not to mention that the carriers themselves, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, just to pick three, they spend every day trying to kill each other. And somehow on this particular thing, they're all going to play nicely and get everything nice and intermingled perfectly and put their tech teams together and beta test and make sure that everything passes. No.
I'm so glad that they're working together. It really warms my heart. This is one thing we all can just fight those dang spammers out there. Verizon calls, hey, Sprint, man, I know we didn't get along.
And how's this too? Out of all the companies out there, I believe we're the only one. I'm pretty sure I don't believe you will find one single reference that says we stop spam. Not one. I will never tell anybody we stop it because I can't tell you what causes it. And if I can't tell you conclusively what causes it, how the heck am I supposed to tell you that I stop it with any kind of seriousness? No. I know that when we do what we do, outcomes change. I think we're narrowing in on, kind of what kind of calling practices are the bad ones, and rightfully so, right? Here's the beauty of all of it, is that if you narrow it all down to where the industry's going and how today you achieve better contact rates from your outbound call center, it all comes back to the same thing. What provides the most respectful experience for the consumer? Ultimately, that is the guiding principle that all of our recommendations and all of our automations come back to. And we think of new ones all the time. And the closer we get to that, the closer we get to really putting the consumer before the center, before the agent, before the profit margin. The consumer wins at all times. The closer you get to that, it's beautiful. The higher your contact rate goes.
That's why we like you, Jason, and the Outbound AI team. We have the exact same value. The user journey is number one. Absolutely.
That's it. What's the right thing to do for each individual person in your data?
I think that's a great place to end it, honestly.
I know, yeah. And
we're so aligned on that one point. So
I know that you're a super busy guy, and I'll go ahead and let you go. But we're going to be putting Jason and Outbound AI's information in the description if you're interested in learning more. Also, we would love to have you back on the podcast again. If you have some free time to let us pick your brain, appreciate it.
Anytime.
So that's going to be it for us today. Whether you love or hate what we have to talk about, we do want to hear from you. So comment or shoot us an email at hello@channelautomation.com. Also, please consider subscribing to this podcast and continue getting tips on marketing, call centers, dialers, strategy, anything in between for free, just listening to us. As always, make sure to keep your lead conversion high.